Imagine a world where humanity pursued unity over division. Imagine a world where humanity acknowledged the oneness of everything in the universe. Imagine a world where humanity chose love and light over everything else. It's Not My Credit to Take explores the stories of people from all walks of life who seek to uplift humanity and restore Christ consciousness on this planet. Their unique journeys of tapping into their gifts, talents, and the infinite consciousness are amazing, and their willingness to share them to wake up humanity to their true essence and potential is even more remarkable. Get ready to laugh, to cry, and to be inspired. I'm your host, Dr. Ed Slover, and welcome to the It's Not My Credit to Take podcast. Hello, JJ. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining the conversation. My guest today is JJ DiGeronimo. JJ is a businesswoman with over 20 years of experience in the tech industry, turned award-winning author that shares energy practices and empowering strategies that people can use to create more impact in their lives. With 3 award-winning books for women, most recently, 74 key findings to raise your energy, sidestep your self-doubts, and align with your life's work, in addition to an online community called Together We Seek, JJ provides action-based strategies to help women unleash their inner wisdom with an exciting combination of energy practices and insights. Through this work, she shares a more personal and spiritual side of her life that undeniably strengthens her mission to empower women at work and in life by helping them tap into tools, practices, and mindsets that illuminate their path. JJ, welcome to the It's Not My Credit to Take podcast.
Thank you for having me. And thank you for the introduction of having some women on here.
I'm really excited about where this is going to go. I recorded with probably a half dozen women so far. Their episodes are in the queue to be released, but the reception has been outstanding. So I'm really excited about that.
Well, this is the year. This is the year to bring together some more feminine and masculine divine energy. So it's perfect timing.
I would definitely want to get into that with you. But before we do, why don't you share with the listeners a little bit more about you and how you ended up where you are in your life?
Yeah. So like many of us, things happen in our lives. We lose parents. Things don't go right in a relationship. Something happens in our family or at our work. And we start asking ourselves, is this it? Or is this where I'm supposed to be? Or is there more? And I'm no different. I found myself in many of those intersections throughout my life. And I think each one now was perfectly orchestrated to push me along and create a level of unstableness that really forced me to seek more information, better understand who I was and why I'm here on the planet right now.
How much of that do you attribute to where we are in the arc of our life? Because as you were describing the seeking, I was reflecting on where I am now, and it reminded me of the Franciscan friar, Richard Rohr, that has written a number of books, one of which was called Falling Upward. And he describes the first half of our life being construction, largely ego, material, status, external validation. And then midlife, we ask those questions like, is this it? Or is there more? And then we deconstruct our life in order to reconstruct the second half. Does that idea resonate with you?
Yes, yes. And another book, I'm reading another book called The Second Mountain. So very similar concept where, the first part of your life is really about sort of getting there, whatever your ego defines is there. And your second half is making it meaningful. I don't know if everybody leaves a high paying tech job in Silicon Valley to do that like I did, but I feel like, we all have our own journeys and most of us are in it right now in some level.
So you've been a successful businesswoman. You're now a 3-time award-winning author, and you're also a light worker. What does it mean to be a light worker?
Yeah, that's something I really had to work myself into. So for about 8 years now, I've been doing some really deep soul searching. And, I started off with just the cornerstone of mindfulness and meditation, which has brought me to all new levels of self awareness with the help of energy practitioners, ancient practices, and healers. And the goal over the last few years is really just to clean out my vessel, my body, with any darkness or anything that's holding me back so I can shine my light as bright as possible, not only to illuminate my path, but to help others illuminate theirs.
So whenever I hear you say that, that reminds me of shadow work. Am
Yeah.
I am I internalizing that correctly?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. And it doesn't have to be, deep, dirty, dark, deep seated. It can just be how you feel about certain situations or your self doubts or some of the fears that you've collected along the way. So it could be just some layers that might be holding you back from leaning in, or it could be the shadow work or the tower moment. It's described dark night of the soul, all different things that really have you kind of questioning and reevaluating, reassessing, and sometimes realigning.
As a light worker, how did you know that you were one? And are there signs or situations where people can know that about themselves? And then what's on the other side of that once you have that knowledge?
Hmm. Well, we're all light workers, right? We're all part of the universal light of God and the higher calling. Some of us work harder at brightening and turning our light on or dusting our light off, and others are still trying to figure out where they fit in the big equation of life. So I think that all of us have the potential to not only illuminate our path from the universal light of God, but also have the ability to illuminate it for others.
And you reference self doubt. You also write and speak about perfectionism and fears, particularly with women. What are some of the strategies and tools and practices you work with women on to help move them to the other side of those?
Well, I think the first step is just really understanding that this is all pretty normal for all of us. I think so many of us are in work environments or communities or even groups of friends where we often don't want to share our vulnerabilities. And I feel like I spend a lot of my time talking about my vulnerabilities and areas that I second guess myself and even hold myself back. And I think I use a lot of my own stories and stories of women that I work with to share that we are more alike than we're different, and that all of us have these voices in our head that often keep us in a holding pattern. And I think when you start to share those things, whether I'm at a keynote at a big company, or I'm running a women's group online, or I'm even just helping someone get their book published, we all have these self doubts, and sharing them is so important because it makes us not only more connected, but it also makes us more available to help others along their way.
You had referenced in the opening that in 2024, the earth needs more divine feminine energy. As a man, I think I need some more divine feminine energy myself. How how would you coach a man through this turbulence in the ascension of the earth and energy and vibration, ascending? How would you speak to someone like me to tap into more of the divine feminine?
Well, as a girl dad, you're really in it. I mean, you're surrounded by feminine energy every day in your home. So I don't know if I could really teach you anything that you're not learning on a daily basis. But I think for many of us, we all have feminine and masculine energy. And the way that I like to define it is that, and I spend a lot of time in my masculine energy. I grew up in a tech career and a computer science degree. And so I was all in the masculine energy of really driving to get there, to be there, to get it done, very action oriented energy. And it's taken me some time to really kind of round out my feminine energy of collaboration, connecting with Mother Nature, really being part of a holistic energy that I probably overstepped and leaped over many times to get the project done or, the ball across the line. So I think for all of us, we have to practice and acknowledge where we are with our energy. How much do we lean heavily in one energy or the other? And how do we balance that out for ourselves first?
I had a guest that I recently spoke with about how the earth has been set up and structured for thousands of years where it's a masculine energy first to the subjugation of the divine feminine. And now we move into 2024, and everyone in the spiritual community is talking about this being a pivot type of year. How do you see it playing out? And how do you see more divine feminine energy entering into the space?
Well, you definitely have seen it over the last decade. I mean, look at just some of the lawsuits and the national and international maybe momentum around particular topics. I feel like this has been just on the rise. And with Pluto changing signs, which happens, every over 2,000 years, like things are shifting all around us. And I do think that the feminine energy is rising. Does that mean it's even close to the masculine at this point? No. But I do feel like the earth, the people, and our communities, both where we live and on an international level, could use a lot more of the feminine energy. And the feminine energy is collaboration, understanding, connecting with a bigger why, connecting with Mother Earth. There's a lot going on right now that's very, very ego driven, and really impacting all of us, and has been for tens of thousands of years, that we're not on a great trajectory right now. So I think a lot of my work is to remind the feminine. I do a lot of work with women, although most of my work is applicable to men too, is that we need more diversity at tables. We need diverse thought. We need diverse ideas to balance out the energy of what's happening on the planet right now.
It gets me thinking about spiritual awakening, and you referenced that earlier. Can you talk about what your spiritual awakening was like and what people can expect as part of that process if they're not yet awakened?
That's a great question. I think it comes down to something really simple. I think my spiritual awakening was very simple in nature, in the sense that I realized, one, I was part of something much bigger, but two, that life was happening for me. Life was happening for me and not to me. And I think when you shift over to that mindset, you understand that you're part of a much bigger equation. And, I can go on to explain many aspects of my spiritual awakening about being part of something so much bigger, and even knowing what I was coming down here for and to do, which is what I've been uncovering each step of the way. But I think I really had to understand that what I was going through was exactly kind of what I expected to go through when I came down, and that everything is perfectly orchestrated for me to grow and learn while I'm here, and that I have soul relationships that are part of my experience on the planet.
That's really interesting. My mind immediately went to people who just can't get out of their own way when they believe that life happens to them instead of happening for them. What advice would you give to someone that is in that blame victim mindset, that perpetual game that they play, where in reality, and you said it yourself just a second ago, everything has been perfectly orchestrated. The universe is conspiring for your good, so to speak.
It is conspiring for your good. I, so I'll talk with the first question. So I've popped in and out of victimhood several times in my life. I'm over 50, so I've had all different types of experiences. I didn't really understand when I was swimming in the mud puddle that I was in the mud puddle, because everyone in the mud puddle looked like me. And I just thought that was a way of life. It wasn't until I started reading books and listening to podcasts like yours, and, listening to YouTube videos and going on retreats, that I really started to see the available energy to me. But I had to make a conscious effort to level up or raise my energy or frequency to get to that new level of awareness and really awakening. And it's hard to do when you are in the victim mindset. That's a very low, low energy. And sometimes we just don't even realize there is a door or a window or even a ladder to get out of there.
It reminds me of manifestation, that we end up bringing about those things that we think about or ultimately believe in. Joe Dispenza famously says, where we put our attention, we put our energy, which makes a lot of sense. I'm curious, though, of the idea of trying to manifest something. Is that even a thing? Or does it just happen based on what we allow to happen given our vibration and frequency?
Hmm. Well, I have a lot of thoughts on this, but I'm going to start with, before you even jump to like manifesting something, you have to have a pure intention. And oftentimes, when you're swimming in the mud puddle or you're in the victim mindset, the tension often isn't pure because it aligns with the energy or the frequency you're at. And so, my advice to anybody listening that wants to raise their frequency and ultimately get to manifestation is to have and start to create a life of gratitude. And sure, you can do it at the end of the day if you want, like many people say, but I'm like in it every minute of the day. So I have gratitude for gas in my car. I have gratitude for hot coffee. I have gratitude for the mailman showing up. I have gratitude for my computer turning on. I mean, really living a true life of gratitude that life is working for you and that everything that's put in your path is on purpose, because God's not going to give you more if you don't appreciate what you have. And starting with the littlest things that are happening for you on a consistent basis can help you raise your frequency, ultimately to get you to a point where eventually you can start to recognize the manifestation that is already happening.
With regard to gratitude, I remember I went through a 30-day exercise of noting what it was that I was grateful for, if for no other reason, for to allow me to get into the habit and to be more present, however overused that statement is, more present in the moment. So we can do that. What other approaches might you suggest to people that are really doable things where, you know being grateful for the gas in your car might not be top of mind, but maybe setting aside time and reflection? Any other strategies you might recommend?
Well, I think it's important that you're in the moment and you can recognize things on a minute by minute basis, more so than just sitting there and reflecting on the day. Like, because that sort of sets up the mindset that you have to be in a like outside of the current moment to reflect on what has previously happened. My approach that has worked is to be in the present moment. And when you're in the present moment, meaning you're not reflecting the past or planning for the future, you're right here, right now. You can literally be an observer of your life, which I had to train myself to do. But when you're an observer of your life, you are much more aware of what's crossing your path. So not only can you have gratitude, but you can have the awareness of what is being brought to you.
Were you able to become an observer of your life through mindfulness and meditative practice?
Oh yeah, I had to do that. And I was not a good student, I will tell you, because my success came from getting things done. My success came from very, very masculine ego energy. And to be mindful, you really have to kind of park that. And that's really hard to do when you kind of categorize yourself as an A plus player, or you categorize yourself as perfectionist or a get it done kind of person, or, buck stops here, whatever the terminology you use. Going into a mindfulness training kind of strips you from what you define yourself with and through, that it's hard to just sit there, because I was making my grocery list and I was rewriting thank you cards and I was, planning out. And my mindfulness teacher is like, what in the heck are you doing? I'm like, oh, I've got all these things I have to get done while I'm here. She's like, yeah, you signed up for a mindfulness class. I'm like, yeah, I'm mindfully writing these notes. Like, I'm here. And I was just like, didn't really understand why I was there or what I was trying to accomplish. And I think I would have benefited if I read up more on what it was and what I was trying to do before I started, because it took me 3 or 4 classes to really get into the ability to just pay attention to your thoughts without grabbing onto any one of them. And I sort of think of it like a conveyor belt. Like, here's a thought about this family member. Here's a thought about the job. Here's a thought about a to do. Here's a thought about, but just like watching them go by without being like, okay, yeah, let me take that off the conveyor belt and work on that.
I love that analogy. I experience something similar. It seems that everyone that goes down the road of mindfulness and meditative practice sucks at it right at the beginning and until they are able to settle in. I'm interested if you experience this too, where early on in being a student in those moments, I found myself after coming out of them starting the list making again and checking stuff off and really deferring back to that masculine energy of taking action. That was similar to you, correct?
Well, I tap into my masculine energy every single day. I mean, I've got lists for lists all over the place, but I do spend a lot more time meditating throughout the day. I spend a lot of more time listening and paying attention and just really kind of grounding myself in the energy and where I'm sitting. So it's mindfulness has not gotten me out of the masculine energy. It's given me a way to effectively use that energy when I need to get things done rather than being in it all the time where I really wasn't taking care of my energy and having gratitude and really recognizing all the things that were happening around me and all the ways that the angels and God were working with me to manifest the path ahead.
We've talked a lot about energy so far, and in your work you use a combination of energy practices and empowering strategies. What do those energy practices look like?
Well, it kind of depends like where I'm at. I would say that I'm very much, very, very mindful of my energy now. And I can't say I really was like that even a decade ago. So I'm very conscious of what I'm watching, what I'm reading, what I'm saying, what I'm thinking about, and what I'm working on. And I wouldn't say that I was that meticulous early on, but I really feel like it's very hard to raise your energy back up again. And so I really think about how I'm using my energy, what I'm focusing on, what I'm engaging in, because I want to make sure that I can keep a certain level of frequency or an energy level so that I can attract things with similar energies.
So if I were one of your clients and you learned that I'm spending 3 or 4 hours scrolling on social media every day and watching the propaganda news outlets and filling my body with fast food and alcohol, where would you have me start in terms of raising my energy or vibration? Because it seems on some level that maybe doing a little bit less of that to start rather than going cold turkey might be appropriate, but I'd love to get your take.
Well, I'm sure we wouldn't even talk, honestly, because we're in totally different frequency bands that you like, I would probably annoy you, right? Because my energy is just so different than your energy. But I think for somebody who might find themselves there, you know, I mean, just really practically, is that the best use of your time? And are you really nourishing your body from the inside out? For me, when people are spending hours and hours on social media, they're either avoiding something or they're like filling something, like meaning like they just need that fix of just seeing what everyone else is doing, which really kind of leads back to the same thing. Like, what are you doing to invest in yourself? Because this is the only capsule that you have right now is your body. And after this is not working anymore, you're not here anymore. And so are you investing in the places that are important to you? Are you following things that inspire you? Or are you letting those inner voices, self doubts, and fears hold you back or keep you in a standstill?
Yeah. I referenced in the opening your most recent book, 74 Key Findings to Raise Your Energy, Sidestep Your Self Doubts, and Align with Your Life's Work. How do you define your life's work?
It's a great question and a good reason I put on the cover because I think a lot of people think it's a destination. And in reality, your life's work is what you're working on and working towards right now. And you have a trajectory that you're here for. And you could still be back in chapter 5, or you can be in chapter 12, or you can be in chapter 54. it's all part of it. And you've got to go through each chapter of your life to get the knowledge, insight, and wisdom to move to the next chapter. So if you're spending a lot of time on social media, a lot of time watching things that aren't really energizing you, you could have yourself locked in at a space that are not really allowing you to move in the direction that you desired before you showed up.
So, for people that live in that type of reality, that's their normal. And we all know that people fundamentally don't embrace change openly. Where's the starting point? Because there's a lot of content on shifting mindset. You referenced leveling up, and yet people have 95% of their thoughts every day. Are subconscious. They're on autopilot. They just go through life. It's time to make the donuts. It's like, what's that first win someone can get to create some momentum and start that positive feedback loop?
Yeah, so some people may do that, but most people go through some kind of tower moment, some kind of shadow work, some kind of dark night of the soul, right? They lose someone that's important to them. They lose a job. Something happens in their life that they start to think, oh gosh, like, is this it? What am I supposed to be doing? I mean, you generally just don't see people waking up one day and be like, okay, this is the day I'm going to change my energy. There usually is a catalyst. And once that catalyst happens, I think you are tested in a lot of ways to see if you believe and trust and prioritize yourself enough to begin your own seeking, to find ways that are really going to help you move in a direction that is not only like productive from the ego side or the masculine energy side, but from the soul side too, that really fills you up from the inside out. And people that are in challenging relationships or difficult family situations, like, you have everything you need to break out of that, but you first have to start prioritizing yourself. And that could be just going on long walks, or maybe move from alcohol to tea, or alcohol to, some kind of fruit drink or something. I think just making decisions that are going to nourish you is a great place to start.
You referenced seeking, and you wrote a book called Seeking. Why is the content of that book so necessary today?
Well, I feel like there's a lot of layers to us. There's a lot of things we've collected along the way, as far back as your early childhood, that could be holding you back in ways from moving towards your light, or really dusting off the skills and gifts that you were given. And I think for many of us, there's no one magic answer or no magic class. It is a series of small steps that uncover more and more of who you are, that open future doors.
As you were describing that, it got me thinking about my youth. My father passed away when I was 13. He
Mm.
died of pancreatic cancer at age 39. And it wasn't until the last 10 years or so that I had a genuine willingness to turn around and metaphorically go give that 13-year-old version of me a hug and say, I love you. Thank you so much for coping how you coped.
Wow.
But you can't come with me anymore. Right? You don't need to hold me up anymore. It's maybe time
Mhm.
for me to take care of you. Is that ultimately what you were getting at there in terms of seeking?
I mean, that's one component. There's, some of us have really tumultuous childhoods that we have to work through walls, stories, behaviors, protection mechanisms that may not be necessary right now. But there's other things that we're doing that could be a job, right? We're in the wrong job, but we're afraid to leave because we're afraid we're never going to find another job like that again. What can you start to do off the side of your desk that inspires you to create enough momentum and energy to either make your job palatable or give you momentum to go look for another one. So I think all of us have different hurdles and obstacles that we are conditioned to work through, but many of us, I think, are waiting for the perfect equation, the perfect door to walk through. And I think if you start to do seeking, whether you go to a class, read a book, go on long walks, maybe go on a solo trip, you'll start to see that there isn't any magic door or magic pill or magic person that's going to show up and make it easier for you. It's really about you stepping into what and where you are right now so that you can create the momentum for where you want to go.
It's so good. It's so good. As you were talking, I couldn't help but also think about religion, specifically thinking about this podcast, the logo of the podcast. And I've chatted with guests throughout the better part of the last year about having to overcome the pain and damage caused by religious dogma and orthodoxy. And throughout our conversation, we've spoken about divine feminine energy, divine masculine energy, light workers, which is in many ways, those are things that are unspoken by traditional religion or the church, particularly the Christian church. Did you have to overcome, any pain associated with organized religion as part of your journey here?
I have, yes. Yes, I have. Uh,
It's
I have
definitely
mixed,
quite
yeah,
common.
yeah, I have. And I do think that there is a place and there is different organizations, different leaders, different groups and community initiatives around the church that can be really fruitful and have a lot of great energy. But I do also think that a lot of folks that I interview for my podcast as well are also challenged with expectations, stories, experiences that often make them second guess their gifts, their work, and their voice. And I think for many of us, we know the truth inside. We are all part of God's universe. We all are part of that just beautiful, energetic light from God. And that we don't have to prove ourselves to God because we are God in so many ways. And I think for many of us, we have to just cherish the fact that God is with us all the time, regardless of what we've chosen to do over our lifetime. And that energy is there to support and love us and wants us to step into our bigger light.
In September 2023, I had an open vision of Jesus in meditation. And the only other person I had ever known that had had an open vision was my mom when she was 16. She had a really troubled childhood and she was swinging at her elementary school and just praying. She always talked to him. And he appeared and gave her so much comfort. So in September of last year, I have an open vision. And as part of that, he and I were walking. And I asked him, why did you do it? Why were you willing to go through what you went through? And he said this twice, JJ. He said, I never wanted people to worship me. I wanted people to walk with me. And as I reflected on that, there was no subordination there. He didn't even say follow. We were on par. I wanted people to walk with me. How does that idea resonate with you?
Well, I'd like to start with the idea that your mother gave you permission to talk with Jesus in your lifetime, because there's not many people I talk to that say my Jesus came to my mother at 16. So the fact that that was part of your upbringing, that had happened and that was possible. It opened the connection for you to receive it. And I think that is just so beautiful in itself, because we often get glimpses of the work we're going to be doing in our childhood and through our childhood. And the fact that that was part of your childhood through your mother's experience, I'm not surprised at all that that's already happened for you, because that was prepared for you. So that's super amazing in itself. And I think that God is within us and comes through us through Jesus. And I feel like that we are all part of the same energy pool, and that we are all here walking side by side as we have chosen to do. And we will all come back together one day.
Yeah. One little footnote to that story. My mom told me that he said to her that you're going to have a gifted son. She told me that when I was 18. And JJ, I wish she hadn't told me that, because
Why?
it well, keeping in mind an 18-year-old's brain and the maturity level, here's that's a pretty high bar. If JC is saying you're going to be gifted.
I think we get glimpses of our life's work early on. I mean, I write a lot about what happened in my house, what happened with mediums and psychics and all these folks when early on, never thinking anything of it, that I would be doing all this work with light workers now. But I think that we get like little glimpses of our life's work. And who knows, like telling you at 18, it might have prevented you from doing something that an 18-year-old would have done because you thought you were gifted, which you are, which I am, which we all are, if we open ourselves up to be so. And I think that all of our work is different. And I think that your work will continue to blossom. But I'm not surprised that your mother was the messenger in a lot of ways for you, especially with the loss of your father. That's pretty significant.
It's an interesting perspective. I've never given any thought to that idea. So thank you for sharing that. I'm certainly going to reflect on that. You facilitate an online community called Together We Seek. What does that community do? How does it come to life? What's your role within it?
Hmm. I really am just the gatherer. I work with many different practitioners, some that are energy healers, some that are ancient practice practitioners. They're all using their inner knowing, wisdom, and gifts that they were given when they came down. And oftentimes people say, do you know someone who does this? Or can you connect me to someone who does this? And I was sending emails and texts all the time. I was like, I have to get smarter about this. I'm going to start interviewing all the practitioners I use so that people can see them, understand that they too are going through their journey, but have cracked open their gifts in ways that are remarkable and really help other people work through challenging situations, energy, shadow work, maybe expectations, or even messages that come to them. And so, yesterday I was interviewing someone from Portugal that has had an amazing experience and has created goddess school. Last week I was interviewing a woman out of Canada that does foraging and uses medicines from mushrooms to help people that have, debilitating life challenges. And I feel like it's just been such an amazing opportunity to bring light to so many practices that are often kind of pushed aside or overlooked, that can really help so many of us on our journey.
Or even demonized. Yeah. You spent 20 odd years in the tech industry. Now you're a 3-time award-winning author. You lead an online community. You've got a podcast. What's next for you, JJ?
Well, right now as we speak, I'm working on a publishing company to publish more beautiful pieces of work that can help enlighten many.
Very good. How can the listeners learn more about you and the work that you're doing?
Well, all the links are included in the description, but you can find me on most major platforms, LinkedIn being my favorite, but I'm also on many others.
Wonderful. Wonderful. JJ, this has been great. Thank you so much for taking time. I really appreciate your insights and wisdom.
Well, thank goodness that you are leaning into your gifts. And I'm super excited to follow not only this episode, but many more, because I'm sure it's just going to get better and better.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Hopefully I don't lean too far and fall over.
I don't think you will. I don't think you will.
All right. Thanks again, JJ. God bless.
Thank you.
You can contact the show at itsnotmycredittotake.com. We'd love to hear from you. God bless.